Hey, Joe, it's good to see you again. We are so happy to be back with you to share a few ideas that we had. We identified something really important with your team, and we feel like, you talked about the forest group is experiencing a trend towards loss of revenue and growth. And we've determined that the root cause of that is a lack of trust, team skills, and leadership. So throughout this presentation, we're going to go over different ways where you can strengthen your team trust, produce healthy conflict, increase your commitment, and focus on accountability and results. And this should create the team that you need to accomplish those revenue goals that you have. And we'll go ahead and start with a little overview of the solution, and we'll pass the time over to Jill.
Hey, so we did want to start with a quick review of some of the concepts you've learned so far. We learned that there are 5 stages teams go through as they learn to work together. That was outlined in the 5 stages of team development. It's important to understand and recognize these stages because your team is currently stuck in the storming phase and you need to be able to move beyond it. So recognizing these stages will help you so that once you move beyond storming, you can recognize if your team starts to fall back into that phase. We also learned about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. This is where we want to focus your attention and provide you with the tools to help build trust, learn how to engage in healthy conflict, increase commitment, accountability, and to focus on results. And in addition, staying focused on each of the components of the 5C team model can serve as guideposts to strengthen your team over time. Through implementation of the tools and exercises we provide you, you'll be able to create the conditions on your team that will improve connection, communication, and commitment. Moving the needle on these components will allow your more experienced team members to increase the confidence of newer members and ultimately help the team achieve increased revenue, which is one of the things you stated was your goal. And then also the book, Do You Care to Lead, is a really good resource for you to strengthen your own personal leadership skills. We recommend you start with serving, and we'll get more into that later. But one of the keys for you will be learning to open up and demonstrate to your team vulnerability-based trust, where you show your team that you have heard them when they say your meetings aren't as structured as they would like, and that you recognize it's not one of your strengths and you need to improve in that area. If you could do that and your team members can do that, you'll be able to support each other and work together more effectively as a team. And Lencioni, the author of 5 Dysfunctions of Team, really says it best when he says, building a strong team is both possible and remarkably simple, but it is painfully difficult. So we're here to guide and help you through the process and understand why each tool will help your team succeed. It really is about practicing these principles and using these tools over a long period of time with persistence.
All right, so the first thing we will cover is building trust. This is the foundation to everything that we will discuss going forward. In our interview, you mentioned that your team works in silos as well as having team members that are at different levels of their careers. All of this is contributing to a lack of connection within your team. The first step in establishing connection is helping each team member understand themselves better. We would recommend having individuals on your team take a personality test. The following are 3 recommendations that we would recommend. The first is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. This is a great tool in understanding how people perceive the world and make decisions. The second is the PDI test. This is a great tool to discover how one understands their tendencies as well as manages their tendencies. And it also helps people become self-aware. Last, the Strength Finder. This is a great assessment to discover one's strength. At times, this is challenging for people to really articulate what their strengths are. So this is a good tool to not only be able to articulate it, but also to build confidence. Once each team member has taken the survey, we would then suggest that your team get together and share something they learned about themselves. As Lencioni mentioned in the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, personality profiles help break down barriers by allowing people to better understand and empathize with one another. We feel your team will benefit from using any of these assessments to better understand one another. The second step in establishing connection is to allow for your team to spend time with each other. We recommend arranging an off-site team building event. Having an off-site team building event helps avoid distractions that can at times be produced in the office. This is an opportunity to really focus on building trust with one another. Choose an environment that is neutral, where the group is willing to be open to points of discussion. Also, look for activities that will focus on building trust with one another. Here are a few examples. The first is drawing one another as you see them. Now, we understand that not everybody's an artist, but you'll be surprised at how people see themselves being perceived by others on the team. The second is the outdoor scavenger hunt. This can be in a city setting where teams can work together in finding objects. Spending time with each other is a critical aspect to building understanding, trust, and connection. The only way you strengthen relationships is to invest in those relationships. We believe an offsite team building event will accomplish this. The third step in establishing connection is to improve your ability as a leader to connect with those that you are responsible for. You mentioned that there are a few individuals on your team that have openly talked negatively about you, and that is contributing to your distrust. As a leader, your role in building trust is critical. During these interactions with your employees, we recommend the following to help you earn the trust of your team. First, serve your team. Service does not need to be a grand action. They can be little things like helping someone meet their deadline on a project, purchasing lunch for your team, or even simply asking if they need help. Service is the best approach in changing the minds and hearts of those that may not trust you yet. It begins the process of trusting your leadership. Another component in improving as a leader is listening to your team. From the book, Do You Care to Lead by Michael Rogers, he notes the following recommendations that we think can help. First of all, focus on being what's said. Pay attention to body language. Lean in during a conversation shows that you're interested and engaged. Have good eye contact. And last, restate what they say. It shows that you're interested in their conversation. By actively listening and serving those in your team, you will see a change in attitude towards you. There's a power in these 2 points. It connects us as human beings and can repair relationships. We think this is the best approach for you to establish yourself of being the leader that they will respect and want to learn from. The last thing we would recommend as a word of caution is to not stop the journey of building trust. Trust is not a one and done event. It is critical that you train yourself as a leader and train your team to constantly apply these tools to be successful.
Yeah, Joe, just like Danny mentioned, trust is something that you're going to continually work on. And all of the activities that we have outlined here as things that you can do to help your team are going to require building trust throughout the whole process. And so this is one of those things that you're going to constantly be looking for feedback on and working with your team. So Lencioni lists the second dysfunction of teams as a fear of conflict. These activities that we show here are to help your team engage in what we call ideological healthy conflict. Healthy conflict is different from the conflict your team is probably used to at this point. Healthy conflict helps teams to work out ideas and solutions that help the team achieve their goals rather than focusing on personal attacks or arguments about things that don't contribute to your overall goals. So once your team has begun to establish some of these basic levels of trust, the next thing that you want to do is establish some norms, some team norms in which you can feel safe engaging with each other. It's really important that to establish these norms, you sit down and do so as a team so that everybody has a voice and is part of the decision on what these norms are going to be. We've listed a few examples here that you could potentially use, but ideally you want to sit down, create 4 or 5 different norms that you can use as a team. And once you've established and agreed upon what those are, you want to make sure that they're published in every single meeting agenda that you have. Make sure that they're front and center and everybody remembers what they are. And aside from that, you want to make sure that you're enforcing these norms. They don't mean anything if they're just written on paper. So you want to make sure that you're doing some enforcement of them. One way to do that is to actually use a bell. And one way to engage the team and get them using that bell is to do kind of a little play, kind of. You find somebody beforehand that you trust. Let them know that you're going to break one of the norms and make sure that they're aware of it, and they can then ring the bell and call you out on it. Then your response there is what's really going to open this up for the team to self-police regarding the team norms. And your reaction at that point would be to recognize that you broke a team norm and commit to doing better. And so this will help you engage in healthy conflict. It will help you to have better conversations with each other, and really get you moving in the direction of a team that can come up with great solutions. As you go through this process, there's some tools that you'll need to use to make conflict something that's accepted by the team, something that they feel more comfortable doing. One of the first things that you can do is conflict mining. What this means is you have somebody on the team dedicated to kind of watching the conversations and the discussions. You want to look for body language. You want to look for somebody who's maybe being too quiet, kind of like you mentioned, Brandon has been extra quiet as of late. You could make sure that somebody is calling on him to get his opinion and making sure that he has a part in the discussion as well. So this conflict mining is going to help pull people out of their shells, help them feel more comfortable in speaking with each other. The second thing is that as you go through the process, you want to make sure that you give, we call it real-time permission, but this is really recognizing good discussion. Recognizing it, celebrating it, being like, hey guys, those are some great points. This is really awesome. We're making some really good progress here. Let's continue to go. I love the passion that we're seeing in the room. Just some different things like that that really engage the members of your team and help them to understand that this is something that we need to do. And it's extremely important for us to be an effective team. There's another tool that you can use to kind of learn how people handle conflict. It's called a TKI assessment. It's actually something you can access through the same company that does the Myers-Briggs assessment from Danny's slides earlier. The TKI assessment gives 5 general ways that people handle conflict. There's different levels of how that all works together, but competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. Now, collaborating is the highest level that you're going to shoot for. But as you learn about those and you learn how each member of your team handles conflict, you're going to learn about when and with whom to use different conflict styles. And your team will learn to anticipate what's coming from particular individuals. They'll learn how to interact with those individuals and be able to reduce the amount of unhealthy conflict that stems into backbiting and politicking and speaking behind people's back and all those different kinds of things that are unhealthy and don't help you move forward. And that's the idea behind a healthy conflict, is we want these to be things that you're discussing that are moving you forward towards the goals that you have. And these methods will help you create and use that healthy conflict in that way.
In addition to establishing trust and finding ways to have healthy conflict, we also want to help your team be more committed to the decisions that you as a team make. The first suggestion is low-risk exposure therapy. This exercise will help your team to know what good team decision-making is and what it looks like by picking something that is little to no risk to your company. For example, your team could come up with a service project idea. You could start by getting everyone's opinions on what this should be and decide what the project you'll ultimately go with. You've also expressed that when your team argues about decisions, you'll make the final decision in order to move on, just kind of make it. And we want to encourage you to only do that if you need to be a tiebreaker. You want to still make sure that others can express their opinion fully first. Making sure that everyone has a chance to voice their opinion will create buy-in, which is really important if you want to have your team be committed. The other part is making sure there's clarity on your team. One way to accomplish this is through deadlines for upcoming projects. Not only is it important to set deadlines, but you need to make sure that these deadlines are visible to all members of your team and are discussed at the end of the meeting. You mentioned that your meetings go long sometimes and you don't accomplish as much as you'd like. In addition to deadlines, establishing meeting norms such as clarifying what it is you'd like to accomplish in the meeting can help. This should be guided by your deadlines as well as any other major objectives you have for the team. This will help your meetings have purpose and not go over time. By increasing commitment by doing these suggestions, you're helping everyone become unified as a team instead of just a room of individuals.
So, Joe, by strengthening team commitment through the tools that Jordan just outlined for you, the outcome will be peer-to-peer accountability. And while leaders are the ones who typically hold team members accountable, this really is not the most effective approach. On great teams, accountability is peer-to-peer. Peer pressure in your organization is the best kind of accountability, and it will also save you inordinate amounts of time as a leader in the long run. So I want to discuss a couple of tools you can use to create accountability on your team. One of those is the team effectiveness exercise. Danny talked earlier about the Strengths Finder, which is a great way to acknowledge and recognize each other's strengths while you're building trust. After you've started to build a level of trust and implemented the tools that Jason and Jordan just talked about, you can implement this tool, which includes having each team member describe how their strengths, the strengths of the other team members, contribute to the team, and then go around and talk about how they hurt the team. In order to create a tone of trust during this exercise, it would be really a good time for you as a leader to, again, show that vulnerability-based trust that we've talked about, that you're willing to be open to things you're doing that hurt the team and ways you're willing to improve. And it would be important for you, Joe, to have the courage to confront difficult issues and hold people accountable. The only way to create an environment where people will hold each other accountable is if, as a leader, we're willing to confront difficult issues. Because if we don't hold people accountable, then they think that results don't matter. Which brings me to helping your team stay focused on results. First, you'll need to provide the clarity that Jordan talked about. And so some of the tools you can use to keep people focused on results include a scoreboard. It's one of the greatest ways to keep everyone focused on a specific target. You mentioned you wanted to get above 60 million in revenue. After picking a specific goal, for example, say 66 million, you could create a scoreboard that visually demonstrates this, along with some defining objectives that give you metrics on how you're going to reach that goal. You mentioned you don't really have a vision other than increased revenue, and a scoreboard would give your team a clear vision of that target goal. Another tool is progress reviews. Regular progress reviews give structure to that accountability by reinforcing timelines that we've talked about, creating opportunity for team members to report to the other team members about the progress that we're making. And then also just publication of the goals. An easy way to hold team members accountable as well is to clarify publicly exactly what the team needs to achieve. You can then focus on who needs to deliver what and what everyone needs to do for the team to succeed. By keeping them open, out in the open, no one can easily ignore them, and it keeps them focused on the team rather than themselves. It allows everyone to see that the team goals are important and not just your own, not necessarily who gets credit for what. And then something that kind of goes along with that are team rewards. This is another way to focus on the team rather than each person focusing on themselves or their own departments. You mentioned some of your team members are being a bit selfish and that they might think they're more important than others on the team, like Jim taking a first-class flight when the expectation was not to book first class. So if Jim can focus on the success of the entire team, he may be less inclined to focus individually. And then finally, celebrate. Celebrating is really important because it makes people feel good, to be appreciated and valued, and to feel like they're a part of a winning team. You've talked about how important the Christmas party seems to be. Use it as an opportunity to celebrate what you accomplished over the year. But even more than that, you don't have to wait till Christmas to celebrate. You should celebrate often and every time they achieve milestones along the way. Lencioni also states the ultimate test of a great team is results. So utilizing the tools that help your team focus on the team, hold each other accountable, and achieve results is going to be essential to you if you're going to reach that $66 million goal.
This is just an example of what a thematic goal could look like and that you could set with your team. For this example, we made it look like a road trip down Highway 66, or as in 66 million as a financial goal. As you can see, there are several lights and there's steps along the way reaching that thematic goal, that thing at the end in the green. The street lights represent sort of a metric to show how you're doing on a certain goal, and those will change as you improve over time. And this is just an example, so please take the time to meet with your team and create your own with them. And remember, make that goal specific.
So Joe, Cloud9 Consulting is confident in the recommendations we have stated to you. We're excited to see the progress your team will make over the next few months as you apply these valuable solutions. We will check in once in a while to see how things are going and provide additional resources if needed. To close, we have discussed how you can strengthen team trust, produce healthy conflict, increase commitment, and have focused accountability and results. We believe that applying this comprehensive plan, you will reach your goal of establishing improved teamwork, which will result in increased revenue.